What's up, guys? My name is Osekre, and this is Osekre's Vibe. In this episode, I wanted to extend my thoughts on Bitcoin, where I stand on it, Dogecoin, cryptocurrencies, and even how I would trade these assets if I was trading them. In the previous edition, I was talking about why I was skeptical about Bitcoin and also why it's important to truly understand what you are getting yourself into, because if profits are the only motivation that you have in doing business, you could actually be investing into something that will be defeating your purpose and the interest of your community without realizing it. I'll be right back. All right, guys. So in the previous episode, I was talking about how awesome the blockchain is, the transparency it provides, and just how all these really well thought through designs are making blockchain transparent and especially secure. I also just talked about Bitcoin and just the fact that Bitcoin could not be used for any transactions because of how relatively slow the ledger system is in recording transactions per second or per minute, and how I thought that wasn't really going to be feasible for e-commerce platforms. But there are also a few other reasons why I've been skeptical about Bitcoin. And one of them is just central banks. I just don't believe that central banks are going to hand over their monetary policies to Bitcoin, okay? Because when it's all said and done, while there really isn't any one person that is sort of pulling the strings behind these coins, just in terms of, how valuable it is, etc., it's actually mostly determined by people who are interested in it. We also noticed recently that there are people that have sort of become evangelists of these platforms, and to an extent are the ones that are driving its prices up. We noticed very recently that when you look at Dogecoin and you look at Bitcoin, the prices kept going up because Elon Musk kept tweeting about them. Elon Musk would just go on Twitter and say, "To the moon," and that pretty much is going to drive up the price of Dogecoin. And so for me, that instantly gives me a reason to pause. What happens if Elon Musk is, say, banned on Twitter? What happens when these folks who are responsible for driving up its price because they keep talking about it are not in a position to be able to, do that anymore? A currency whose value is dependent on someone else's tweets, to me, is sort of problematic, right? Now, someone can argue that, whenever presidents speak, the statements that they make impact their currencies. If it's good news, it strengthens the currency. If it's bad news, it probably doesn't. But again, presidents do not just come out and speak irresponsibly. Well, let me not even go there. But you get the point, right? There are people that are in positions who are not allowed to exploit conditions to their advantage. So a billionaire who is holding a lot of Bitcoins, who can often will tweet, and it will sort of, for some reason, drive the price of that coin. For me, is something that is problematic. It's Bitcoin has to be driven by something stronger. In my opinion, it has to be driven by something stronger beyond one individual's tweet. Now, that is still going to happen. And again, if you get into trading these coins, that is your decision, right? But I kind of wanted to sort of put this point out there to give us something to reflect on. The other reason why I've also been hesitant on Bitcoin and some of the other coins in general is that, central banks are just not gonna make this happen. Or let me say, they are not gonna make it happen easily. No country is going to say our currency is not the dominant currency in this country, so let's actually encourage all folks in our country to use Bitcoin. Now, there are certain governments that have come out and openly spoken and said that, you know what, we are going to hold some of our reserves in Bitcoin instead of, say, gold, or instead of, say, silver, or whatever other, assets they used to hold their currencies in. They're saying, hey, we are going to hold some of our assets in Bitcoin. That is a slightly different situation. And again, there are only few governments that have come out to say this. And I believe that the governments that have come out to say this are those whose currencies are probably, shitty. And so they have nothing to lose. And so why not actually sort of almost pair their currencies with Bitcoin? So that is fine. Are governments, especially central banks, going to allow their government to allow people to use Bitcoin actively in open markets? That is something that we still cannot agree on. So there might be an argument that will be made, or there might be a case for the fact that just as gold is held in reserves and certain currencies are paired with gold, just as certain countries have oil reserves and their currencies are paired with oil, Bitcoin could become something that certain governments hold their currencies in. And over time, their currencies might be paired with Bitcoin. It could improve the economy. It could improve, the standing of, their banks, just in terms of, their back pocket. But as to whether Bitcoin is going to be allowed to become something that is traded openly day to day by most of these banks is something that we are yet to find out. And as I speak, I know there has been news about crackdown on Bitcoin in some countries. Another reason why Bitcoin has its skeptics, and I've moved beyond the point of skepticism. I'll come on that in a second. But another reason why, Bitcoin has moved beyond that point of doubt for so many people is the fact that just recently Tesla announced that it was going to accept payments in Bitcoin. Okay, and that is huge. That is massive. So beyond banks, beyond governments that have started holding, 1%, 2%, 3%, of their reserves in Bitcoin. Bitcoin now looks like it has a path towards active transaction. And it sort of makes sense because no one really goes to buy a car on an e-commerce store, right? Or even if they go online to sort of make the decision, their payment isn't processed in the same way that, say someone purchasing Amazon or whatever, is going to make a purchase, right? They are most likely to go to the dealer, see the car, test drive it, and probably make the payment in store, right? And so that sort of makes sense for something like, Bitcoin, where, the transaction or the payment being made for a car is not as rampant as people buying on, say, Amazon or eBay, where there are a lot of transactions that are happening at every second. Okay, so that is something that is worth thinking about. Now, where do I stand on Bitcoin? I think Bitcoin has come to stay. Come on, let's face it. I think cryptocurrencies have come to stay. And in spite of all the arguments that I'm making about why I used to be skeptical and why there are skeptics, I think that the fact that there is now mass adoption for these coins means that they are here to stay. And listen, Dogecoin is a meme. It's supposed to be a joke. But if you understand anything about this generation, it is that the things that people take so seriously are the things that this generation doesn't really want to care about. And the things that people think are funny and silly are actually the things that they literally want to take and move to the top. And that is why I believe that Dogecoin is going to keep running up, even if it retracts a little bit from its recent 600% run. The other thing that I'm going to say about whether I'll trade these coins or not is, I would, again, I'm not a financial advisor. These are just thoughts and opinions that I have that I'm sharing, and so please do not take this as a professional financial advice. What I would do is probably trade Doge. I'll probably trade Ethereum and other blockchains, because I feel like blockchains have more use in the future. Like you've probably heard about NFTs right now. NFTs are being built on the blockchain. There are so many things that are going to be done in the future that will be built on the blockchain that, in my opinion, provides more upside for anyone that didn't get into Bitcoin before 40K or 50K. I think it makes sense to start looking at other things that will have the kind of run that Bitcoin has run. If you purchase Bitcoin around 20K, 30K, 40K, you are good because you have about 50% to, 75% of a run. 100%. If you got it at 20K, we are talking about 300%, right? But if you missed that Bitcoin boat, then I recommend looking at other assets that are much cheaper and that have room to run. So you can run with it on its trajectory upward. And so that FOMO that folks have developed about Bitcoin, I think doesn't make sense right now when there are other assets that can run and give you a 600% run in a week compared to Bitcoin 600% in the last year, right? Doge has gone up 600% in a week or a few weeks compared to Bitcoin that's gone 600% in the last year. You want to go for things that are cheaper and have a higher upside than something that has already reached this critical mass or critical height that will still be sort of edging its way up, but might not give you, relatively compared to other assets, might not give you the same length of a run. So that is how I would trade Bitcoin and Doge and Ethereum and all these other cool cryptocurrencies, coins and blockchain assets out there. My name is Osekre. This is Osekre's Vibe. I'd love to know what you think about this conversation. And hey, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you're enjoying this conversation, I'd definitely appreciate it if you share this with some friends out there, and definitely let me know your thoughts. I'd also love to know some of the things you'd like to hear me talk about on this platform. This is Osekre's Vibe, and I'll be back with some more.